you check if teletype is update, and once you update, then you restart Atom. And once we get out of the exception, so really funny because I was playing my own streaming as well. So okay, now that we have teletype, I'm gonna let's say share, and here I'm gonna pass this thingy on here. Okay. Now, if everybody gets connect, so please go and check Slack and copy your hash and then when click on the icon, paste it, and then click join. Okay. So does everybody hears me? Is everything clear for now? Is anybody behind? Only 3 people on the session. That's not an issue. Maybe let's wait some more to join us. Okay. Well, seems that more people are joining. So, okay, let's start in the meantime. Okay, I just do a little recap, and I'm gonna just go a bit fast.
Hello, Mauro. Sorry, could I interrupt you
Yes.
for a second?
Okay.
Looks
You,
like some people can't join us on Atom. So could you explain just in a few seconds how can they join it?
yeah. So they can click on the icon here, and they can paste the hash that they can find in Slack here. I just put it there, and basically they can then paste it on the after I've clicked this icon, paste it here and click join.
But I think for some people like Yusuf here, he wasn't with us in the last class, so he did not install um, Atom from the beginning. So he need to install Atom and he need to install the package, which is
Okay,
type
so
or tele something.
for who didn't install Atom, go to HTTP as probably atom.io, and then install the plugin type by clicking in settings, plugin, packages, sorry, and then click search for palette type. Okay. All right. So information to install teletype are there. So who is behind, please make sure to be in page. But in the meantime, we have to continue. So we will always get chance to watch the video back. So it's not gonna be end of the world. So what we have here is a class, okay, and this class basically has a constructor method, and we understand that the the constructor method is useful for us to get the parameters of the initialization of a class. We initialize the class by saying new, prepending the new word from the class name, and then we call it as a method, and we pass the arguments on the class itself. So those are the arguments that we pass through the constructor, and we initialize the class. With the keyword of new, all right, basically we gain the scope, and this scope is represented by the this keyword. Okay. What's happening is we can declare some attributes in the scope, like this name, this date of birth, but also we inheritate all the methods, for instance, are being declared from in the class itself. So like validate properties is actually a method of the class itself. For making the basic class and starting to declare the first functionalities, we just use some simple example. In this case, we call it actors and movies. But this time I want to continue by fetching some data from the server and basically use promises rather than callbacks. And I want to initialize class that I created or that I'm going to create. But before doing that, I would like to explain to you other two concepts of a class. So the first concept, and I'm going to create a new document for this, is going to be a JavaScript document. So is the possibility of extend an existing class. Let's grab, for instance, this class actor here. Let's assume that we have a method which is add a movie. We did a little example where we would like to have introduced as well class, for instance, director. Okay. And this is in order to, for instance, represent a website like IMDb. What we were doing here is what we find out is that the actors and director, okay, actually could share the same, let's say, the movie class, right? And we will end up in a situation that's more like this, where we have this code, this kind of duplicate between these two classes. So one of the property of classes, okay, or objects, is basically the possibility of inheritate, like the properties of other classes. So let's assume then rather than have two class actor and director, we have two class movie per movie employed, something like that. Not sure this is their best name ever, but it will be useful for our purpose. So what we can define here, for instance, we can define a constructor And we can also, for instance, already declare, since we know that movies needs to be an array, we declare this movie is empty. And in director and classes, we can at this point use one of the properties of classes, which is called extends. So we declare a new class, okay, we give it a new name, we follow the attribute extends, and then we can refer to another class we want to inherit all the properties from. In this way, for instance, in this way, actor and director will have both the attribute, the property movies and the method add movie automatically. Let's try just a simple example. So let's make an actor, pick a new actor, and we give it a name, maybe George Clooney. Name here. Also, let's also do get. Well, get we can do later. Okay, so here we can have an actor, then we can make a director. What could be a nice director for a movie? For me, one Brothers. I like that. So there are actually two, but it's okay. Coen Brothers. I'm not even sure I did it good. So in this case, we have two class. They look kind of empty. This seems they don't do nothing. But since they use the property extend, as I just mentioned before, you will basically inherit all the classes that it extends from. So at this point, should be able to do Clooney add movie, and then we can say CN7, and then Coen Brothers add movie is not the land for old. I'm not sure how this is called in English, actually, this movie, but it's good enough for this point. We can check what Clooney movies are and what Coen Brothers movies are, and we should see a list one movie extent. So let's keep this, make this bigger. So the 12 CDOP, let's make this bigger. At this point, we can try to run this extend, and what we can see immediately is that we have Clooney as the movie Ocean 11, and Coen Brothers movies there is not a land for old. Is this clear? And is there any question on extend at this point?
extend can only use by classes, nothing else.
Extend can be used by classes. In this way, yes. With this syntax, you can use only by classes. There is some other way to extend other kind of object, like literal objects. Literal objects are just like this, okay? And you can extend objects like doing object assign, okay? But the difference with this is, for instance, I can show you this. This is actually more to work for a plain JSON object, okay? And is for extend, basically, for instance, an existing object into with some additional property. The only thing that you have to remember is that the assign doesn't work recursively. What does it mean? Let's assume that I have a property A, which is an object, which has a property B, which is an object, which has a property C, which is something. Okay? Then you say here you have a property A, which is an object. Okay? What will be the result of this? Can someone say to me? Has anybody idea about this? So I'm extending from left to right. That's important.
I don't think so, actually.
Okay, let's try. So it is actually A is empty. Okay. So usually what you will have expect is that this property will have been kept. But with the object assign, if you try to extend an object, it only overwrites in the first level. Okay? So you use object assign with plain objects carefully. And by the way, this is an important distinction, and I know it's a lot of stuff to learn, but it is important that you know. We should learn the difference between plain objects and objects in JavaScript, which are two different things. Sorry, object literals and object. Difference between object literals and object constructor. There is some video on YouTube, but let's see if this gets the meaning of it. Well, I will try to investigate a bit better for send you a better resource instead of just the first result of Google. So, okay, we are now capable of extend other properties. But let's assume that we want to keep add movie method, but instead we want to address a different behavior for add movie and for actor and director. Let's assume something. Let's assume that we do add movie here. And every time that we add a movie and we get the movie, we say that the role here was actor. And the movie is movie. Okay? And same goes for the director and the lead. course, this code is still not valid, but to make it valid, what we can do, so I want to reuse this actually this piece of logic. I want to still push the movie into the movies array. So one of the nice parts of using classes is that you can, when you override an existing method from the previous class, from the class where you are extending from, what you can do is allows you to have something that is called super, okay? And super is actually a keyword that stands for, refers to the class that you extending from. And this becomes really crucial if you want to do specializations in OP. So you want to have classes that they do the same kind of things, but they are specialized in some way, so they become more spatial in what they are doing, in what they are trying to achieve. So at this point, I'm gonna use the super method, and the only thing is, don't get me wrong, is because I don't use that often. I'm not sure it should be something like add movie like this, super.addMovie, or just super. I'm gonna just try with super in the first place. If it turns out it doesn't work, we can always change it. The super key here, unexpected here. So probably he wants me to do at this point. The error explains really easily what should be, I guess. So at this point, maybe this should work. Yes. So as you can see, right, I'm always saying, for instance, is Toonie movies is equal this. This console log. Have a better output. Doesn't hurt anybody. Con brothers movies is equal this. So if we run this, ooh, I missed something. There's a comma here. So I can still see that movies is an array, and that then my elements get pushed still in the movie properties over here. This allows me to reuse most of the code that I already wrote for my class. So until this point, I always like to ask, is it clear, or is there something I should explain a bit better? Is something that you think is too obscure? I give it always 2 minutes to understand. In the meantime, I give it a sip to my coffee.
To be honest, I didn't understand what we have done.
What we have done. Okay. So, can you tell me what you find between line 2 and 13?
I was actually following you until you use extends movie employed. This point I have understand it, but then the super these things I didn't understand what's the purpose of doing this. What we would like to achieve to do these things.
So what we like to achieve, okay? So for instance, before, right? Uh, you actually pointed to something I didn't explain in the correct way. So I'm gonna try it again, okay? We have a class movie employed, right? Before in the beginning, when we talk about how to represent, like for instance, uh, EMDB, a website that I guess most of us know, um, we were trying to use object-oriented programming, okay? Object-oriented programming is a way to write, is a methodology that is that structures your code in a way that is understandable easily for humans, okay, and has some principle that allows you to write less code, okay, or let's say better maintainable code. It doesn't need to be always used, but this is just a good practice to know, especially if you look how, for instance, most of the technology in the browser works, how all the primitives are made, or how the, for instance, all the DOM objects works. Everything is actually an object, a class, like you can see here, right? So if you understand the principle, we are starting from some really basic stuff, right? In the beginning, we had a file which was like this, okay? We have an actor, and then we have a movie, right? Uh, and during the assignment, I asked to, instead of having an actor and having a movie, I ask you to create a star class and also a director, okay? What I was expecting from your assignment is that you, most of the time, you will have duplicate code between, for instance, the actor, the director, okay? What I'm trying to give you is how you can use, for instance, extend, and you can share some, let's say, base class to other classes, properties, and be capable of reusing the code that you have on top, but in the same time, make it specific for the class that you are writing. So, for instance, in this case, we create two other objects that is called actor and director. They both are movie employed, okay? They both work for a movie or more movies, okay? That's the only purpose of our representation in the, in the fact, in the stuff that they share both, okay? Both they work for a movie. That's why for us it's important extended from movie employed or employee. So what I did here, they both need to have movies in their careers, okay? But they're not always gonna be actors. They could be as well directors, all right? But this piece of code will have been duplicated. So if I, for instance, I will not have extend, okay, I should have ended up with a situation was more like this. And where you will have something like this. Now, this and this is actually the same piece of code. And what I wanted, it was to share that logic, okay, and have it in a common place without worrying about uh, what's in add movie base itself. So what I did is right now, instead of just passing a movie object, I also pass which role uh, I'm adding to my movies. And in this case, for the actor, the role will be tagged as an actor. Isn't now a bit more clear?
Yeah, sure. Now it's more clear.
Any question left for this?
Yes, Mauro, do you hear me?
Yes.
I have a question about extents. Does extents works the other way around? Like, can we use actor methods on movie employed?
Well, I think no, you cannot do that.
You can.
No. Also extend, think about it nowadays. Uh, so there is two ways of making application, all right?
Yes.
When the application is too big, when the code base is too big, extends is not always your friend, okay? If you have too many classes that extends one single object, for instance, most probably you will end up having an object that does too much, okay? And
Okay.
it's kind of dangerous. So extend is something useful, but always if keep it in mind that you should keep it clean, and then don't do too much. Don't rely too much on it. Okay?
Okay. Yeah, it's clear now.
So keep it in mind, do it, use it, is one of the properties of it, but uh, it's not the best thing ever. Let's put it like this. Now, later on, I will explain to you compositions, and that will make more sense
Okay.
when it's a big code base. Actually, composition you're gonna learn it with the React, so I don't really have to teach you. Whoever select all the text, please deselect it all, because otherwise I don't see shit. Okay, let's move it a bit on. Something else. So let's assume that now these two guys actually we let's start creating also a class movie. Okay, movie doesn't extend from anything, and the only thing that we need for the movie is actually something that's called constructor, and let's just give it a name for now. Okay, so let's put this name is equal name. So at this point, now I'm gonna show you a bit what does it look like using compositions rather than use extend. So we both know that Clooney and Clone Brothers, well, maybe I'm not sure what movies they share, but for sure they share some movies, right? So George Clooney and Coen Brothers, for sure they share something. So they both did this movie, Subricon. Okay, let's just put this in. We have this movie here, so we make for both Clooney, well, Subricon. Then we make new movie, and we give it this weird name in there. What we can do is, for instance, at this point, we can pass. We can say that both Clooney and movie Suburban, super weird name. Coen Brothers, movie Suburbicon. So at this point, movie is actually an object itself. It's an instance in this moment of movie. So Suburbicon is an instance of movie. And if I run this node, what I can see is that in both of the case, I can see that the role actor, right, gets the movie Suburbicon. For the Clooney gets the movie Suburbicon there, and the Coen brothers also gets the movie that I'm expecting. Now, what I can do, for instance, I can say, I can make it a structure that is a bit more complex. Where I have my movie class. And I can say, for instance, something like this actors is equal an array, and this directors is equal an array as well. What I can do here is I can check if the movie is an instance of movie, otherwise throw an error, right? And add the role accordingly. The role passed here. And of course, we can do this just here in add movie, but since we know that both share this property, we can then just do it here. So what we can do is we can say movie, and we can go and say, for instance, add employed employee, and then we can say, for instance, movie role, and then movie. Wow, this doesn't work great. Movie is super weird. Movie instance. How we can do this? Sorry. So let's change in the movie instance. And over here, what we do is we say, we give it instance role, right? That's what is passing. So in this case, the movie is going to be in the movie property, and the role is going to be the key, which is going to be passed here through this argument, okay? So this is always passed by the super itself. And then here I push it to movie, right? Or otherwise, I could say, actually, let's do this. Rather than do this, I can do this. Let's do actors push this. Here, movie instance. Sorry, I have to rename a bit of stuff. I changed my mind on the way. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually know that this is going to be an instance of movies, and to double check is and since here I'm passing just a string, this is not valid anymore. You have to pass an instance of movies. Of course, for a better way of doing, we learn how to validate this. And if we run this, we should start to see a bit more complex structure. Let's do it a bit. So now, for instance, we see that we pass, we populate the movies, actors, and directors directly. And if I go and instead of printing all this, and I just say I print the Suburbican, you should see that we have also the actors and the directors inside. So, and this is called basically, for instance, it's called how to say composition rather than extending. Okay, and then why it's called composition is because rather than use extends, you basically use other instances, okay, to create the connection between the data. Is this piece clear? Is there any question? As always, I give it 1 minute and then I move on.
Yeah, it's clear for me, but I don't know if for anyone else.
Okay. If there will be questions, please shut them or block me if you think I'm going too fast and you're losing the track. So, last thing about classes that I want to explain is about there is two special property that are called get and set classes. For that, I'm gonna show you a bit of MDMN. And so how does it work? And especially, I think it's also important to get track of the set. So the getters and the setters are basically our way of retrieve data in a way that you want while you want to consuming it. So it looks like a method, all right? But the way that this method gets called is basically by just using normal expression syntax rather than method calling. So I will just show because it's easy, all right? Let's assume one thing. Let's assume that we want to get, when we check for director, director. Okay. We actually only want get the name of the directors. Okay, we can find it on this property. So since we know that all the director instances are part of the director class, what we can do is we can, for instance, and we know that this is an array, okay, we can reuse something like return, and this needs to return something always. Keep in mind, if you use get, you should always use return. We can do something like this: directors dot map, for instance, since it's an array, and here I'm gonna have director object, and what I can do with it is I can just return the director dot name, for instance, which I'm sure is gonna be a string. So let's assume that I want to do this. Here, I should see before when I should have seen when it's an object, I should have seen the class name when a console log, which is a pretty useful information. But in this case, I should see only this property and not anymore, for instance, movies there. Let's give it a try. Boom. So what happened right now? Well, getters are kind of special function of classes that gets automatically executed every time you try to access to a certain values. Is this clear? I would like to always ask again, and please stop me if it's not. Okay, seems that it's clear. So I'm gonna do the last part of classes, which is gonna be setters, and what basically we can do with setter is, for instance, well, set, like, let's say a movie. What could be a nice way of setting the movie, for instance? Let's say that we want to set the director again. Let's say that every time we define a new director, okay, we delete the current directors, so the push doesn't happen anymore, and it gets empty, and then, like always, okay, for setter and getters, no, in this case the return is no needed because it doesn't happen anything during the return. So what we can do is, for instance, we can say the new director is actually the only one present there. And what we can say, for instance, to make this function a bit more useful is if it's not if new director instance of director is equal false, what we do is that we promote the new director as a director. And just to be sure, and since we are playing with the actors and directors, let's assume that in this case we want to promote Clooney as a director. Something we can do here is, for instance, we can just get the name of the director, so we know that the new director is going to be an instance of actor, for instance. So we can do something like if new director is instance of actor, and we run this. Else, we say it's just a shrink. Let's give it a try to this. Let's say that now, at this point, before we console log, it's going to be Clooney. As you can see now, the console log of line 71, it does match what we were going to expect. Again, and for this object part is the last time, is this clear? Give it 1 minute.
Actually, it is difficult. So if you can just, like make it a bit simpler, like by explaining it in a simple way, maybe.
Okay. Which part is difficult? Also, this is a bit more important.
Yeah, maybe we sit and get. Let's start with that.
Okay. So when we let's assume that we wanna say every time that we wanna say that we wanna get the directors, okay? We assume that we so the director is gonna be a list, okay, of objects that is gonna be populated with the director object itself. And what I'm doing here, okay, since this list is this array as the property map, okay, I'm looping through the directors objects and I'm getting all the names of it, okay? Because if we will have not, I will have not done this, okay, and I will have choose to access to these directors, I will have get basically an array full of director objects, which sometimes is just what we want. I will show it to you by commenting the line on 70, so we don't set Clooney as a director. and we will just, for instance, console log the directors properties that it should be Cohen brothers. Okay, so by doing this, you will see that the output here is like says director, and then you can see the property of the director itself. So Cohen brothers and movies, etc., etc., right? Now, I explicitly say director here, right? Let's assume that I want to say get director string. I'm changing name just to make sure that you don't confuse it with this one here, okay? So I make sure that this is declared nowhere else. So what I can do is, for instance, I have a join of just space of this directors array, okay? So I'm looping through the directors, return only the name of the directors, and then since this is going to be an array, I'm going to just join it. Okay, so I will make a string out of it. When I'm going to use this property here, so as you can see, it doesn't need the parentheses like calling a function, although will behave like a function, okay? And I will just call it like I will call any other property. This function will get executed and it will grab the value of the return of this getter property. So let's try. So before I get the object director with the movies property, and now I'm expecting to only get Coen Brothers there. Is it get a bit more clear? There is more question about get. Think about that get is like a way to declare your properties a bit in a way more functional, more magic behind. So you can put logic in how your properties should behave in your objects.
Yeah, that's good for me. Thank you.
Okay. In the same way, we have the set part. Okay. So think about the why you wanna every time that you wanna do. So before we saw what we could do by doing the get. Okay. In the same way, in this case, it works also why assigning something. Is there anyone who wants to ask something? No? Okay. I heard a little noise in between. So I started again. In the same way, we can let's say getters are useful to run a function for getting certain values, right? What we can do as well with classes is use setters to run a function, okay, every time that the equal sign gets in a specific attribute of the class itself. So let's assume that we want to say that we want to set new director. Again, I'm changing the name in order to avoid confusions. Also, if it new here is not really good naming, but okay, would work for now. And let's say that we gonna again get back the director string. So what we will see is that instead of Coen Brothers here, right, we will have George Clooney, okay? But in this case, okay, my function actually does a bit too much. And let's assume that we want to do something a bit more simple. We want to just say push new director. Okay? So as you can see, here we are using just an equal and we are just passing Clooney, but actually what's happening in there is something that it will look like this in the, let's say, if it was just a normal function. That normal function gets called like in a magic way by just using the assign operator. So let's give it a try and see what's happening. At this point, since I change my function my setter function with the new director, what I see here is that actually the new director gets pushed. So what I should see is getting something like George Clooney and Coen Brothers and Coen Brothers. And to make it a bit more spicy, in the join we use the and sign. So let's see. And here we go. Coen Brothers and George Clooney. All right. Let's make it a bit more fancy. Let's make this a string literal. Sorry, a template string, and put something like directors are and I think pretty much that's it. Is this a bit more clear? Does it make setters and getters a bit easier? Think about it as just a way to mock what you usually will ever use like this. You can use like this, or you can access the property that will have basically return something, will have been like this, and now you can just use like this, like they are actually properties. Keep it in mind as well that this works well only when involving there is only one argument for the setters and no arguments for the getters. Okay, if this is a little more clear, I will continue with promises. No C#, but JavaScript. Okay. So something cool about promises is so for instance, let's grab something that we saw last class. XML HTTP request in JavaScript. So how actually does it work is something that looks like this, okay? And what we know is that this actually is going to be callback, is going to be called when something gets resolved. Okay? So when the event load is get fired, this function, which is a callback, is gonna get executed. Fine, nothing magical or from where we or complicated since the last time we saw each other. I do have though should have something like JSON placeholder. I find something like oh, this was handy. Let's see if I find something else. What it was. So for instance, I think here they use it. Hey, it's not working anymore. Oh. Okay, let's get something easy. Let's get, for instance, GitHub API. And let's make a simple API for getting, for instance, repos. Is good enough. Maybe repos no, but maybe we can get user. Get a single users. Wait, let's check this. This should be enough. Users and then username. Okay. For instance, if I query this let's say this thingy, this endpoint, here in this response text, I should see the same content that I can see in here. So, and since we are using here XML HTTP request, unfortunately, I cannot run this in the Node.js because XML HTTP request doesn't exist in Node.js. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create an HTML file and then I'm gonna just give it some promises. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a script tag, then I put an src, and say pointing to my file. Of course, we can actually do something like script here, and text, JavaScript. Windows not really needed. So if I open this index.html here, I should see already in my console all the information that we get from basically the callback that we have here. Sorry, here in line 4. But let's assume that I also want to fetch some more information, and I want to also get, for instance, all the followers of Mauro, right? So what I will be forced to do is I'm gonna be forced to have 2 requests here. The one who does that loads basically my profile information, and let's call it this B for now, and the one who's gonna copy, for instance, my followers information. So at this point, if I open back this page, I'm gonna see and clear the output. I can see that I have the informations that I have before of the user, and plus an array with all the people who like follow me on GitHub. This is nice, but as you can see, this code looks kind of messy, and especially if you want to do some action like I want to fetch first this, and then I want to fetch this. Well, this will look something like probably this. Okay, and imagine that you have more and more requests. This is gonna get more and more complex, and it will form something that is called usually callback hell. Okay, and to give you just a visual representation of a callback hell, it's nice to just open a picture and see how does it look like. So something like this is kind of representative what a callback hell looks like. It's kind of a Christmas tree, and even though we are almost in Christmas, this is actually not really good for our code. We prefer other surprise for sure. So to make this kind of code a bit more readable, in our help comes promises. And promises works kind of in an easy way. Let's assume that we have all this code. Let's comment out for now, and let's just start with the normal promise. Let's say promises need to be initialized because it's another object, for instance. That's why it's important to know about objects. And so it requires the new on the constructor, and the first argument and the only one that you need to pass, although you can pass multiple, is actually a function that you can use as a callback. And this function has 2 callbacks parameters, which one is resolve, which is the first one, and the second is called reject. In this case, for instance, just to see how we can show you how does it work, we're gonna put a set timeout, which means call it in the future, and then we do something like a console log. Hey there, or maybe we put the console log here. We put a console log. we call it 500 things. So, for instance, here we are simulating an asynchronous operation where something happens in the future, maybe after 2 seconds, and after that, we just call it resolve. Okay? This is actually just the basic of the promise itself. So again, promise is an object that you need to initialize, and it only takes one function where there are passed two arguments on it. The first argument is going to be resolve, and the second argument is going to be reject. What is powerful about them, for instance, and let's open the browser. Let's clear here. I say promises, exclusively promise. So what is powerful about them is, as you can see, I see the job gets started and then it gets finished on the future. But let's assume that we are waiting for this guy to be finished, and once they be finished, I want to actually execute another one. So let's create another then, and over here this is gonna be just a normal callback, and at this point I want to know, for instance, let's assume that I need some results out of this task. Let's assume that I want to know when actually this gets finished. And as you can see, what I did, I'm just passing a new date object. So, and this date object gets passed to the resolve. What's happening here is that the resolve will pass the result to the then callback back. So we have a nice linear flow from top to bottom and easy readable of what's gonna happen next. So what I can do here is have, for instance, console log. I can say the job got finished, and then I can say, for instance, the date object. As you can see, what happened is once I call the resolve, the argument passing in there, it will have been passed then in the then condition, which is all that we need for solving basically a synchronous operation that may end in the future. But let's assume something else. Let's assume that I want to actually chain then two promises. How I can do that? Well, this is actually pretty easy because in the then, all right, you can actually return a value, and you can actually chain multiple then. And then, well, at this point, the language becomes ambiguous. So then. But what you can do is by returning a new promise, you can chain multiple then. Let's just try it. Let's actually do something else. Let's say that I wanted this, call it is gonna be a function, and we're gonna call it get me job promise. And what we do is we do return, and we put job number, for instance. Okay, at this point, what I can use, since I create this function, a job promise that will return a promise, okay, I can do something like this. Get me a job promise, say this is job 1, and then I say then it's gonna give me the data object, and I say okay, it's finished. Then I say get me another job promise. In this case, it's gonna be 2, and then I'm gonna say it's gonna give me again a data object, and I can probably print the same thing over and over again. And since we have some time to waste, that we can just do by copy and paste. We can go further, a bit more, and copy all this. And say this is job 3, this is job 4. So at this point, I will have a sequence where every time a job takes 2 seconds, let's make it 1 to don't wait too much, and I will have a sequence to execute job 1, job 2, job 3, job 4 in a really ordered way. Let's give it a try. Job 1, job 2, job 3, job 4, done. Okay. Before I continue with explain how this can be useful to solve XML HTTP request, I would like to ask you, do you guys have any question?
Yes, I have read also something about then and there is catch. So
Yes, this is a good one. Uh, yeah, let's assume that something goes wrong at this point. For whatever reason, we have an error. So the other property of promises is actually the possibility of catch all kind of error wherever it happens, or it happens in the promise itself or in the then conditions. And what it does is you can declare a catch on the any point of the promise. Usually this is put in the end for convenience. Also because make sure that you have to use the catch at least covering the subjobs as well. And what you can do at this point is you can, for instance, say console log error or try again, for instance. Console log find an error, and we can then check what's gonna happen. So over here, as you can see, we end up to be in this line and we find the error. This allows us, for instance, to try again and say, well, you know, even even wrong, I still wanna get the chance to do it again. Another promise. So you can still do stuff like let me job promise and resolve it. And here we go. So if you see, you went wrong, and then it starts again. Let's keep the console log of the error there, and just for the purpose of it, I put again. I run the test. Sorry, make this bigger. And this is the second message is thanks to this. Is this clear? Is catch clear? Then clear?
Actually, then is clear, but catch not yet. So
Okay, try again. So whenever something happens wrong, wherever it is, for instance, or in one of the then conditions, or for instance, here, right? The function, if you have a catch function declare, okay, which always accepts a callback, okay, doesn't matter where the error happens inside the promise, the catch function will be always called, okay? Also aware, not only that, something that I missed to say, so for since the latest application, you can also call reject when something doesn't get resolved as you expected. Also that would call, for instance, the catch function underneath. Let's give it an example. I'll show you an example. Instead of calling resolve here, we're going to call it reject. But let's give it this here. I'm going to call it reject. And we're going to just say new error, something went on fire. Let's put also an emoji there. Fire. Boom. Emoji are cool. So what I will expect is that we enter in this catch function, this gets output in the console and the errors as well. So let's try it again. And here we go. Also our cute emoji is there. We trigger the error by just running the reject in here. But let's assume that something just went wrong. In some code, we are incapable of call the reject. And it just happens to be an error. Let's see what's happened. Here's the console. And still, in this case, the promise itself, it didn't get catch here. And this because is inside the set amount. But if the error was thrown inside the promise, okay, in the first level, at that point, we were still capable of catching the error underneath. So
But
to explain a bit more what just happened.
can I speak? Just I have question.
Yes.
Yeah, as we understand now, if we have 4 file and we want to read all the 4 file, as you say, 1, 2, 3, 4, but now we have error in the second file or the third file or the one file, and we want to catch the error. But now in this way, we crash all the mission. So if we
Yes.
have an error in the first file, so all the mission it's crash. So what is the point now? If we need to complete all mission and give us just an error in which file, but other file if there is no error, it's completed. It just give us the data from this file.
Well, that could be your choice, okay? That you wanna still resolve the promise anyway, okay? So let's assume that the job. So for instance, let's assume that something went wrong here, right? Something you can do still. You say, let's assume that something goes wrong. Something goes wrong inside the set timeout for whatever reason it is. It doesn't really matter. What we do is we are capable, okay, anyway, anytime. Actually, I shouldn't do this. Sorry. Let's put the try catch inside. Looked really nice. Let's fix some indentation. This is inside. This is inside. So what we are capable here is even this throws a new error, okay, and we are capable of find here, we can still resolve and say new date and say console log, hey, first, hey, we try to solve your promise, but didn't work. Job solve, solve the job, for instance. Job number and didn't work. And let's see that let's say that we throw this error if job number is equal 3. Okay. Elsewhere we resolve anyway. Okay. So it doesn't matter if an error happens or if it doesn't. That's completely fine. But we show this only here. Okay, sorry for a bit of confusion. Now the code should be okay. So again,
we can say here if job number not equal resolve or not reject.
where you wanna do that?
Because now we have
Tell me the line number.
22 in the try if jump number equal to 3.
Yeah, but the resolve and reject are just functions.
Oh, so what if we want, for example, not specify any number of job? So in global, we don't define any job, but if there is any error in any of job, give us
Yeah, but that's what I'm simulating. I'm creating an error, right?
Mhm.
In the middle of the jobs. Okay. So especially when this gets called. Okay.
Yeah.
So first starts, second starts, third fails, but fourth starts as well.
Ah.
But what I do here, right, is if the job is number 3, okay, I run, for instance, I trigger an error, okay? And what's happening here is I get a different console log, and I can also say I return resolve empty, for instance. Okay? It doesn't really matter. I'm just simulating that an error is happening in there. Okay? So if I run this, I can say, one second, if I run this, you can see that 3 tried to be resolved, but it didn't work, but it still continues in the 4. Is now this a bit clear? What I want to mean is every time that you call resolve, okay, it doesn't matter if you actually your function actually gets a resolve or not. All right, that it could be you choose. You can say, okay, I want to resolve multiple requests, but I really don't care how this can be, let's say, if this fails or not. Okay. But let's try to do something a bit more funny. First of all, let's assume actually, wait, let's wait 1 second. Do you have any question on this?
Are we finished from promises?
Let's say that all the features are done.
So are you going to cover what's the advantages from the promises, or you're going to do it later on?
Well, I'm gonna just show you how you can, for instance, fetch how you can run a XML HTTP request with promises, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And how you can use the data to initialize an object.
Okay, great.
Okay, so I'm gonna just run and do that. So let's make it a new file. Take the JavaScript again, and let's start with a simple class. We say it's gonna be GitHub user, and it gets a constructor, and it gets a bunch of data, and it's gonna basically what it's gonna do is it's gonna, for instance, loop to the data, and it's gonna assign to this. So what we can use is object assign this data. This is actually a dirty hack, but it's gonna work for now. Then what we can do is we can create a promise on any request. So I create a function that I call it get URL. Nowadays, you actually have a built-in function in the browser, but not all the browser have it. That is called fetch. It does the same. But in this case, we're gonna use our own promise. So we're gonna say return new x. Ooh, copy this from here. because otherwise I get always wrong. No, this needs to be new promise, and this is a resolve, and this is a reject. Okay. So what are we gonna do is we're gonna create a new request, const request is gonna be this, and then we're gonna say request open, and then we're gonna say it's gonna be a get method, and then we have some URL, but in this case we say it's this one, for instance. But probably we wanted this part of the URL, so we make it URL here. And then once is solved, what we do is we add an event, add event listener. We say once it's solved, we call it the function, and we call it the resolve, and then we pass this request text. It's not response text. Response text. Now there is a problem with this response text, and it's this is actually plain text. But what we know is that that basically GitHub returns a JSON. So what we can do is we can JSON encode this. Promises and objects. And once we open the request, the only thing left is to send the request. Okay. So the first thing we can do is we say we can do get a URL, and we can just pass the URL for fetch a user. So we say fetch a user. Then, okay, we have the user information. We can create, for instance, a new, what it was? GitHub user. And pass user information to it. And we just console log for now. So we fetch with the promise the my user in this case, and then we return the result as a JSON to the then, and then we initialize a user, and then we console log the user. Let's check out how this works. Now, first of all, we have to change our index.html to point it in the right file. Do this, and we execute it. Oh, it's not JSON encode, it's JSON parse. Sorry. And here we have our GitHub user. Unfortunately, I think I did this wrong, because this needs to be assigned data. So what we can do is we can actually do object keys data, and it's going to give us an array which we can for loop with the keys. And this is a bit of magic. Sorry for me for doing this. It's good for the purpose, for the educational purpose. Okay. Why I don't see, for instance, do I get the login name, for instance? Or maybe just the ID. User ID. See if I can see the ID. No. Sorry for being the struggling. 1 second. Console log data. Sorry. I did a mistake there. That's why. I didn't put user informations inside. I just put double GitHub user. Okay. Now this should make a bit more sense. And in fact, I'm capable of getting the user.id. Okay. This is good enough for now. And the only thing that I want to add on this is, for instance, I want to be capable. So I want to say, for instance, I want to create, I'm going to start having the user here, the empty variable, and then I'm going to assign the user later, and then later I'm going to return a new promise. I'm going to return a new promise, so get URL, and here I'm going to use instead the followers part. And what I can do is, at this point, I'm going to have followers. Okay. The only thing that I need to do is then do something like user.followers is equal followers. And at this point, I should be capable of, let me see. Oh, but I don't console anything, so let's console user followers. You see all the followers in my user. This is great, that's good enough, but something else that I want to do with this is I then want to use something else. I want to use a return user, and then Actually, no. I'm done with the dance and dance. So once this is, I fetch also the followers. Let's keep it simple. I wanna get, I wanna document query selector body. I wanna print a user template. Okay, and for this I'm gonna use the get property. What I'm gonna do for it, I'm just gonna create a little template. Let's assume I have here let template, and let's make it an array. Well, we can do a const at this point. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna push some stuff on it. So for instance, template push first of everything an image with the avatar of the URL. So let's make this, and let's make this, what is avatar URL here. For now, that's it. Let's just then return template dot join. Let's see what's happening with just this bit of code. I'm capable already of rendering my avatar on the screen, but that's maybe not good enough. So let's do some fun stuff with this. So let's assume we have a template here. We make a div. We have our, let's make a title. Indentation here doesn't work that great, but it's fine. This login, I think it's this login. Yes. And then we also make a list. And it's gonna be template. I'm gonna push. Over here, we're gonna say, for instance, this followers map, and then here I get the follower, and we probably can reuse the same template. So let's see how we can do this. We push a list item. Let's open list first. And let's also close it after that. And here we're gonna put like in bold, well, in bold, well, let's make it H5. H5 is gonna be the follower login, and then we're gonna add the image as well for followers. Follower avatar URL. And what we do after this, we, since map is an array, we join it. Okay, let's give it a try to this. What do you think is gonna happen, guys? Pretty magic, eh? Not that much piece of code. Only one getter and the setter. Well, no setters and two promises. And not that much code. Do you have any question on this?
It's not a question, but I'm a bit confused about that code, how we can like use it as well. Now, I think that we just need to practice on it to know how we can use it as well.
Yeah, indeed. It is a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and
Uh,
I'm really a bit confused, and sometimes I'm a bit like didn't get the concept as well. But I will read and practice just to get it.
no problem, no problem. Just try to digest all these informations. If there is any part unclear, please tell me. Do have a question though? Do you have these files on your computer as well?
You know, I think if you want us to have it, there's a link, or I think the code for every file that you want to share it with the people in live coding,
Okay.
because
So
every file will have a new code.
uh,
Share it.
so are you incapable of get these files?
Yeah, please.
Okay. I can send you a guest for this.
Thanks.
So I'm gonna make a guest for you. And you can have it. Promises. Yes.
Sorry, can you please make guest for the other files, GS files?
Yeah, I will add to the same guest.
Yeah, please.
Uh-huh. So I'm gonna edit this. And I'm gonna add the file.
I have a question.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, about try and catch.
About?
Try and catch.
Okay, try and catch.
Yeah. Is it kind of resolve and reject or similar to it?
No. Try and catch basically tries to handle this kind of exceptions. And you can put any block of code in it. And if something fails inside it, the try, then it will continue on the catch and it will allow you to run code underneath. And if you don't do try and catch, although there is some performance consideration about it, basically if the exception runs, okay, all your functions basically stop working. Not all of them, but there is some behaviors regarding scoping. But I guess you will be forced to learn by experience.
So for now, don't use try and catch for us.
No, because you don't have any specific reason. If you run in promises issues, you will need to use. And anyway, we will use them when we will use async and await in the next lesson.
Okay, so yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Is there any question left? Okay, seems a bit silent, so I consider the lesson, I guess, close. I hope you enjoy it. And
Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thank you.
you guys more than welcome.
Thank you, Marvel. It looks like a mountain of information.
You're gonna have a quite big amount of information to digest.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Marvel.
thank you so
Have a
much.
nice one.
Sleep well and see you Sunday.
Okay, see you. Bye bye.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.